Like so many other colleges and universities around the country and the world, the University of Kentucky was forced to close their campus and move classes to an online format in order to finish the spring 2020 semester due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Students living both on campus and off were resigned to finish their classes away from their classmates. Residence halls closed and students moved home, bringing an unexpected end to their on-campus experience for the 2019-20 academic year. Now, as we move into a summer of all online classes, the university is currently working on plans to restart and welcome students back in the fall, but just how that will work is still under development. I'm Cody Kaiser with UK Public Relations and Strategic Communications. Joining us today on the Behind the Blue podcast are three students who will be sharing some of their experiences from this spring, along with their insight on how they made the best of a less than desirable situation. Kelsey Hutchison is from Cynthiana, Kentucky, heading into her junior year this fall. She is an arts administration and dance double major. Thank you for being with us, Kelsey.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Ben Branscum is a spring 2020 media arts and studies graduate from Stearns, Kentucky. Thank you, Ben, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And Keyera Jackson is a 2020 journalism major from Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you, Keyera, for being with us today as well.
Thank you for having me.
So when the decision, and I'll just throw this out for any of you that kind of want to talk about this, and we'll kind of go round robin with it. When the decision was made to move classes to an all online format, obviously that was not what you were expecting to hear. What were you feeling at that moment? Had any of you had online classes before? And what was kind of your process of how did you process that kind of shocking moment?
I guess for me, it was weird because I've never really been a big fan of online classes. I only had one, and it was literally this semester. And I took it all online knowing I just had to take it pass fail. So I was like, okay, we'll just one online class will be fine. It's not the end of the world. And then I remember just everything escalating faster and faster and faster. And it got to the point where it was like, we're all online. And it was hard to believe because I was like, there's no way. It's all online. And then there we were the week after spring break and everything was all online. So it was a lot of anxiousness, I guess, because like I said, I've never been a big fan of online classes and doing them. So for me, it was just really intimidating in a lot of ways. So.
For me, I was actually in a dance class when they, made the big announcement that we were going to be online for 2 weeks after spring break, that first announcement that UK had made. And so, dance is a very in-person kind of sport, activity, art, whatever, you want to call it. So we immediately were looking to my teacher for how dance was going to look online, and no one at that point really knew. And then when they announced that we were going to be online for the rest of the semester, that was kind of like a little smack to the face almost, just because there really isn't a great way for everyone to be able to kind of participate in dance the way that we used to, for space limitations, things like that. It was just a lot of trying to figure out how we were going to make it work and how, I was going to make it work in the space that I had. So it was definitely a long thought process that went into it, but it ended up working out for the most part. We did a lot of classes over Zoom and stuff like that. So it ended up working out.
It was definitely a weird and confusing time. I, before that, hadn't had any online classes, so I was just going off base of what my friends would tell me, saying online is a little bit harder because you have to learn so much information and it seems like a short amount of time and you don't have easy access to your professors to where you could usually walk into office hours and they can show you how to do something and then you're out of there. So it was definitely a big adjustment. And one of my classes was a newscast that we produce on a weekly basis. So in my mind, I was like, so does that mean that this class is just over? Because there's just like no way we're going to produce a newscast and we can't even go to the studio. But we ended up still doing a newscast.
And, you know, to that, Keyera and Kelsey, both, you mentioned this, like some of these classes seem like an impossible fit for an online format. Even, you know, you talk about dance or you talk about a journalism, like how do you produce a television show? And I think about classes like, you know, chemistry classes or things where you're trying to do hands-on types of things. How did you feel like your instructors changed their approach for some of these classes? And how did you have to change your approach as a student, like your mental mindset and how you approach these things?
I think you have to definitely be creative when it comes to a television show. You have to realize that in the profession that you're aspiring to go into, everything isn't going to be the same. And you have to definitely have to adjust, but you really have to have the mindset to want to even go the step further, because it is a lot harder. You do have certain limitations to where you can't be next to your anchor or your co-anchor, or you don't have your usual team. You can't like talk to each other physically and bounce ideas off of each other. But I feel like as long as everyone has an open mindset and wants to still put in the same work as you would have put in if we were all together, then anything is possible. And I feel like that shows just based off of the 5 television shows that we produced once we went online.
Yeah, and I think coming from a dance perspective, that's one of those things, you know, I grew up dancing, so it's a very community-based art form. Like you learn a lot just by watching other people, you know, watching your classmates and stuff like that. And it was definitely hard to do things over Zoom and just be alone, and having to get up and kind of like know that you're just going to be dancing by yourself in your house. But I think that in turn, I was also able to kind of flip that into a positive, you know, because I didn't have, you know, my classmates to watch, and I didn't have a mirror, you know, like we would usually have in a studio. So that kind of gave me this new self-awareness that I think that I didn't have before. So there were goods and bads to it, but you definitely do have to be creative, and you have to know your limits with your space. And, you know, like there are a lot of things that go into it, like, you know, how big the space is, what kind of floor you're dancing on. So the first few classes that we had, it was a lot of, you know, figuring out what kind of shoes you want to wear, or if you need to bring a rug in, and, you know, if you need to move furniture around, and where you're going to set your camera. So there were a lot of things that went into it, and my professors were really good about letting us kind of figure that out for ourselves. So
I think about the sense of loss that you must have felt, each of you, and no longer, like, not just the class material, but no longer being in a physical space with your classmates, whether it's in class or even, you know, even at the student center at Champion's Kitchen or somewhere where you're getting a meal. How did you or some of your friends react to that change? What was that like, having to kind of give that up? I mean, you didn't even have a say in the matter. It was just kind of like, I don't get to hang out with these people anymore.
It was weird. It was, I remember I was at my internship at my office one time, and it was right before spring break week, and my friend Alex was leaving. He goes, well, if this is the last week of classes, I guess I'll see y'all later. And he just walked out, and we all just kind of like laughed it off, like, you're being funny, haha. And then everything happened. It was like, oh wow, like I won't probably ever see Alex again. And it, like, I can't speak for Keyera, but for me, just having like, I'd made a tight knit group of friends I'd felt like with my major and inside of my classes and stuff. And then having to go from, I'll get a walk with them at graduation, find out what they're doing, to you're all cut off from them and what they're doing. And it's now, you'll see them maybe at a virtual graduation or on social media, or maybe on some workspace like that you may share. Like it it was definitely, I don't want to use the word tragedy, but it was definitely kind of like heartbreaking to not be able to see my friends and I celebrate this kind of a moment per se. So
I think that I got lucky that I have not graduated. So that's kind of a good thing for me, because I know that, you know, whenever we do go back to school, I'm still going to see the people that I was with, you know, beforehand. And so that is a plus for me, but it definitely was kind of a shock, you know, to go from, you know, living with one person every day. You know, we hung out all the time, me and my roommate did. And it was kind of just like a shock, not, you know, waking up and like seeing her getting ready or like making coffee or something like that. So there's definitely been a lot of FaceTiming since we've been gone. So that's, you know, technology is a plus in this situation, but it is, you know, kind of nice to know that I get to go back and still see the same people that I was with before. So it's not as like shocking as it is for, you know, those that have graduated.
Definitely. It was definitely a lot harder being that, like Ben was saying, a senior, and you look forward to those last moments, those last little senior moments with your friends. So like dead week, the finals week, when it's nice and warm outside and everybody's just like out on campus, just meeting people for the last time. It was definitely hard not knowing that the last time you saw your friends was the last time that you were going to see your friends, especially as a senior, because mostly everybody went back to their hometowns, and then graduation, and then not having that ceremony and those pictures. So it was a lot of loss, and it was definitely a lot to take in.
And I would think too that, you know, it's easy to kind of look at your situation and say, you know, she's from Atlanta. She had to go back. You're back in Atlanta now, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's a good day's drive away from campus, whereas you've got other students who, you know, like Kelsey or Ben, who are, you know, not terribly far away. You know, Ben's currently still in Lexington. And the idea of being able to see some of your classmates, you would think, well, you know, they're still in state. But the fact is, I'd say that, you know, all of you have friends with students who are from all over, not just from Kentucky, not just from Lexington or the surrounding areas. So, you know, I think it's probably safe to say that you're all experiencing that sense of loss, because you don't get to see those people, and they are more distant than you would think. So do you feel like there were resources available, or what kind of support? How did you feel like your individual colleges or departments kind of helped through this adjustment? I mean, obviously there's a lot of information that's coming through. They had to kind of make sure that you know, everyone was up to date on everything, especially for, you know, the two of you who graduated. You know, what were there some things was there communication there with your colleges and departments?
there was some in the beginning. It was kind of still very like limited on the knowledge that was coming through. Like when we knew we were going online, everyone was like, okay, everyone prepare for online. But like, it was kind of a bit of a slower start, I felt, or on my end, at least, it was a slower transfer of information, but it got a lot better, a lot faster, because everyone was just adapting as fast as they could to what was happening around us. So starting off, it was not ideal, but it got a lot better, a lot faster. So
Definitely. To add on to that, I would say definitely a slow start with the emails and stuff. I really think everybody was just confused on what it was going to look like. But for the College of Communication Information, and then specifically the journalism department, I feel like they did a good job with keeping us in the loop. So I would always receive emails saying, we still haven't figured it out quite yet, but just to keep you in the loop, that we're still actively working to see like what your classes would look like. There wasn't a time where I felt that my graduation wasn't going to happen. Like, I was very confident in that I was going to pass all of my classes and that we were going to figure it out. And I passed all of my classes and they figured it out.
Yeah, I think for the arts admin department especially, because, you know, we talk about, this kind of like emergency preparedness a lot, just because that's like part of the job that we're, going into. So I think that they did a really great job of being able to, it wasn't perfect, of course, but they did a really good job of being able to, kind of switch the flip and just be able to make us feel calm. And it wasn't that we, knew exactly what was going on, but, they kind of kept their cool. So that made us as students feel a lot better about the whole situation because, they weren't freaking out. So we didn't freak out. And I think that was kind of like the big thing in the very beginning of all of this, was just kind of everybody staying calm and everybody keeping their cool. And then, once we really started to get into it, they did a really nice job of being able to, kind of get our opinions on, what we wanted from the class now that it was online. So that was probably one of the more important things for, the College of Fine Arts, was them being able to ask the students what, they wanted to get out of their classes and, what they wanted to see now that we were online, instead of just making all the decisions without us. So I think that was really helpful for us.
Kelsey, did you live on campus?
Yes.
So living on campus, or even Keyera, did you live on campus or off campus?
Off campus.
Off campus. So even whether you lived on campus or off campus, and I know, in Ben's circumstance, you still live in the house that you were in this spring. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're still, me and my roommates, we're still here. So.
Yeah. So talk about that situation, whether you've already gone through it or whether you're facing it, probably in your case, Ben, of I guess the idea of having to move out before the end of the semester. I mean, that's it brings its own set of emotions, and it brings its own set of issues. Probably, Keyera, I don't know if did you have a lease up to a certain point? Did you stay up until the end of that, or did you just go ahead and move home?
I have a lease until the end of summer, but I did go ahead and just go back home. I guess it was like no reason for us to kind of stay here with the coronavirus. And like you said, it does bring its own set of emotions because you feel like you're not done yet. You still have classes, you're still here for a reason, but you're going home. So then it's like, that's where the confusion is. And it's like, did I graduate yet? Am I still focused on classes? And it definitely makes everything that we were saying feel real. So now it actually feels like this is really happening, the coronavirus, and I really have to go home for my safety, but still at the same time focus on classes.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with what Keyera's saying there. I mean, I haven't moved home yet, but it's still like that experience of like, this is a monumental moment of, you get a degree and then you go out into the world and you do your real world job and your big boy or big girl things. And now it's kind of like, I get my degree and I have to kind of stay in hiding for a few months at least. And then, I don't know about Keyera's position, but for me, like the job market has been kind of sparse, and it's been a lot of, I might have to spend some time at home with mom and dad and recuperate from the situation that's happened, just out of my control stuff that's happening. So it's been a more fearful move out. I mean, I've moved out from 5 years of college or 4 years prior of college. Like I would always like move home or move somewhere and do some work for the summer. And that's always kind of like in a happier, like lighter tone of like, oh yeah, we'll be back in the fall. We'll see you. And now it's a very, it's supposed to be a very happy tone, but it's a very dark tone right now. So.
Yeah. So when we got, kind of that first email saying, we're going to be online for 2 weeks after spring break, I kind of made the decision to go ahead and just pack up a lot of stuff that I had in my dorm, just because I didn't think the situation was going to get a whole lot better that fast. So, just kind of having, even the idea of, not going back for the semester in my mind, I just went ahead and packed up, the majority of my stuff and brought it home, just in case. And then, we got that big email, like, you get to make an appointment and you get to come for 2 hours and move out all your stuff. And, moving out is kind of a whole other beast in itself when you're in the dorm, because that's one of those things, like, you want to make it feel like home and you want to make it, feel nice. So you usually have like a lot of pictures, and for me, I had like vinyls on the wall and, posters and stuff like that. So it was just kind of sad almost to have to take everything down, because I felt like, that was kind of the place where, I kind of made it my own, and it wasn't, like anybody else's but mine. Like nobody was living there but me. And so it was kind of a sad moment to have to kind of rip everything down and take it home. But it was a very stressful time too, having those 2 hours to come back and like get the rest of my things, especially like I came up by myself and did it. So I couldn't imagine what it would be like if you still had everything that you owned in the dorm. But I think it was definitely a learning experience. I will definitely not be bringing as many things the next time that I move in. So it was a learning experience and also a sad experience at the same time.
Well, I don't want to take up a whole lot more of your all's time. I appreciate so much you guys being with us today. I would like to not end on such a bleak note. I would like to end on a little bit more of an upbeat note. Some people might flourish in an online environment and others might struggle, especially if, when you think about all the distractions of trying to work from home, from Netflix to roommates to just whatever it may be a distraction. Hopefully we won't be taken by surprise as we were this spring. But looking ahead, we're making a plan. The university's making a plan to restart in the fall. We're still in development of that, so we're at this point not sure what that looks like, but we will have a framework for that. But as with anything, we have to have some flexibility built into that because we don't know what the future holds, and we really don't know kind of what course we're gonna take with this. So you plan for the best outcome, but you also have to make, plans for adjustments. What are some things that you can share that maybe worked for you as far as study routines or approaches to class, or how you collaborated with your classmates in this environment? What could you tell maybe incoming freshmen, or even, students who went through the spring semester, had to make this transition and it didn't go great for them, but they're looking to rebound and in case this happens again, they want to kind of have a best practices approach to it. What are some things that you could share that maybe worked to help make the most of that situation for you?
I think for me, I found it easier to try to keep my old schedule. So like if I wasn't meeting for a Zoom class, I would still try to get up and, do the work that I had for, a 10 a.m. class at 10 a.m. So that was really helpful. That was also difficult for classes like 8 a.m.s though. So I wasn't usually up at 8 a.m. in my house doing work for that, but it was nice to be able to find a time that wasn't 8 a.m. to kind of get that work in, just to make it feel like I was still in a routine and still, on a schedule. So it didn't feel, as random. And when it came to like collaborations, FaceTime and Zoom were kind of key in that, because it was helpful because you could actually talk to people and it was just nice to see other people. So don't try to like limit yourself to just working on your own. Even if you just want some company, I think it's nice to have, like a study partner that you can hop online with and try to get work done. So those were kind of my two big things that helped me.
I think for me would just be to remain proactive. So alongside of making sure like during the day that you still have that same schedule, if you were on campus and you wanted to attend an event, they still have virtual events. They have virtual things that they're putting on. And even though this isn't the most ideal time and it's not the same as a in-face person-to-person interaction, it's still an interaction that you can have with somebody who's outside of your house. So if you're like me, you're just home all day by yourself, just doing your Zoom classes, that can be very depressing at times. So if you need to attend one of those virtual events or even social media and just reach out to somebody who's a freshman as well, who's coming in and who's lost and who may not have those family members, just being proactive with the things that you would have done on campus, still online, I think that type of virtual interaction is still better than nothing at all.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Kelsey and Keyera's points. I would also like kind of looping back to Kelsey's of like keeping a schedule. Like I keep a schedule. Like I know I found myself when I first started doing all online, whether it was my personal job or my internship or my classes, like I would find myself overworking myself. And like if I like my day ended, like say my Monday ended at like 3 in the normal world, like for some reason when those first few weeks I would end at like 7 or 8, I would just keep going. So like definitely keeping that schedule, but also keeping a big end point to that schedule. Like this is my time I'm going to start. This is the definitive time that you'll stop. Going for walks is something that helped me. I know like I tried to keep when it came to a schedule, like if I knew like, okay, at 3:00 on Tuesdays, I had to a 15-minute walk from one class to another, like being in quarantine, I would get up and go for like a 10-minute walk around the block or go at least get outside of the house. So that was one of the bigger things that also helped. And just definitely having open lines of communication. I know a couple of group members from a class and we all got together on Slack and made a Slack chat just for like one-on-ones or like a group conversation, be like, hey, did you understand the coding in this class? Or hey, did you understand the assignment? And that was a really big positive because while email is great, it's not the most direct thing at times, as we all I'm sure have experienced. So definitely just like if you have like a study buddy like Kelsey mentioned, or someone that you can like connect to a little bit more like closely, like definitely having an open line of conversation is a huge positive. So
All right, well, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. And, hopefully, somebody that might listen to this, there might be some students who listen to this that, that take these tips or get some information out of this that kind of helps them as they move into the summer even, or the fall semester and whatever we may end up facing in that regard. Keyera Jackson, Ben Branscum, Kelsey Hutchison, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.